Greetings. All right. So I'm back again, and I'm doing something a little bit different than normally. I write up the thumbnail beforehand, but I'm going to see how much of this I can get through. Because I have a little burst of energy, and these topics they're pretty heavy, pretty heavy. So if I have the energy for them, I want to be showing up for them. And it's a little humid out right now, so you're going to see that my hair is kind of a little fluffy right now. Um, yeah, as the like right now, it's July 3rd, 2023 in Boston, and my cat is sitting next to me, and he's being very cute and cuddly. And so maybe he's come over here to kind of provide some comfort while I read through some of this pretty heavy stuff. But, you know, the, on one hand, it's not entirely, for a lot of this methodology, going into revisiting specific experiences that were really difficult the first time around. Um, it's not necessary, but in this hub, it just because this is so infrequently examined, it's so taboo. It's so taboo to consider that our relationship with shame and our personal power and even our will and like self-discipline, like showing up for yourself, that could, that first is just epidemically interrupted by using things like discipline in a way that is like 99% punishing. When discipline winds up being a really healing, like, modality for, yeah, it just winds up being a really, like, the way to break through is showing up for ourselves. So I'm gonna read some of this. So we're in the interruptions and stressors of the third hub, and I think one of the most important contextual points in evaluating all of this, some of it in the last part that I just read, which was page 132 or page 133 now, is that these interruptions are kind of levied on us before we have the nervous system or cognitive capacity to register this as anything other than reflexes. We don't have the logic and the prefrontal cortex development to, or even just the brain functioning yet, when a lot of this of discipline and shaming is used. We don't really have the ability to learn it the same way we learn things as adults. So, and people don't know that, like, I don't think that's widely understood. It's starting to be, I think, but for our own process of conscious reclamation, where we reach back into these aspects of ourselves and reassess them and revisit them and understand them and show up for them and really do the important work of reevaluating and, like, essentially, like, renegotiating. So, yeah. So I'm gonna do some reading. We'll see what happens here. If I burst into flames, just carry on. Carry on reading reading your own book. Yeah, that's it. Just go on without me. Alright, so authority. This one's discipline and punishment. So consequences and limits teach us self-control and help us to avoid potentially damaging outcomes. Children raised without structure can struggle with self awareness, self control, and boundaries. But a child's will can also be broken by authoritarianism and or excessive discipline that uses outsized punishment and consequences. Yeah, I think that so I think that one of the things that's important with evaluating the third hub is that the pendularness of permissive parenting all the way to authoritarianism. So it's like there's this overcorrection where everything is wonderful, and then the recorrection when the consequences for that reveal themselves, which are, lack of self-confidence, lack of boundaries, lack of appropriate behavior, um, you know, lack of responsibility for taking responsibility. And when that's like overcorrected with excessive discipline, then, kind of the will gets squished. So, I think it's worth bringing this up because just having empathy for how nuanced this is and how for parents it's so challenging to figure out how to make the right calls, to realize that you won't always make the right calls. You just kind of do the best that you can, and that, with what you have. And if you are a parent and you are in this process doing parinama work of evaluating your own inner infrastructure, that emanates outward, without this type of tool and this type of support, we're just kind of, parents just left with what was handed to them, with, with the, I think most people try to optimize off of their own experience, but without context, it's kind of challenging. So, all right. So authoritarian parents are often risk averse themselves. And when they don't receive respect and admiration in the world outside the home, they demand it in excess within it. Children in strict homes are often taught discipline exclusively as a practice of virtue and doing things they don't want to do, and are taught to respect their parents regardless of the parents' behavior. Do as I say, not as I do. The obedient child can become a rigidly disciplined adult with a has to do life. I have to go to work. I have to go to the gym. I have to make dinner. When bound together, unquestioning obedience and discipline are joyless. And again, discipline as devotion to the people and things that matter to you is the path to fulfillment and satisfaction. It's a powerful reframing to connect work and responsibility to things you truly desire and the people who matter. It's enlivening, fulfilling, and it usually feels great to take responsibility and accomplish things that have meaning for you. Yeah, it's, one of the things right now that I'm kind of working through is the role social media has for this, and the challenge in how nuanced, like how nuanced these things are. All truth contains paradox. And that paradox is really related to the circumstances, the timing, the conditions of something. So that can completely shift the context of something and actually kind of flip it into reverse and make it either untrue or lacking in sort of relevance in the context. But so this reframing, and this is one of the things with folks where, when I've been thinking about this a lot today, and I'm kind of thinking, I'm like, is this arising enough that it feels right to talk about? But, um, it's really common for folks, especially in the West, when they're in their own process of self-discovery, to immediately become interested in becoming teachers long before their own processes have ripened, matured, had a couple seasons. And, my suspicion is a lot of that has to do with our relationship with power. That like the sense of internalized power emanating from within is like what we're working to, what this is ultimately about shifting towards. But the adaptations for power, which we'll get into in the next section, yeah, are it's this power being when it's dislocated, that it's either experienced as being having power over other people makes us powerful, or being validated by powerful people makes us powerful. And in both of those scenarios, it's an external validation. So it means it's relative, and it really relies on our sense of power. It relies on circumstances around us, so it can shift, and it's incredibly vulnerable. And it's something that actually, as a structural load-bearing beam within us, it's important that it can stand alone. So, yeah, so where I'm actually going with this is that this relationship with responsibility, the have to life. I have to do this. I have to do this. I have to, I have to go to work. I have to wash the dishes. I have to, um, without a relationship to the pleasure of it, the fulfillment of it, which is that, if you wash your dishes, it's like your kitchen is really, and you clean your kitchen, it's really satisfying. You walk in the kitchen, feels really nice, you know? It's like if you go to work, maybe you don't like your job, but the core reason is that you get to make money. And maybe that money is being, you're saving it. Maybe you can take care of your family, take care of people you love, provide for them. An act of devotion, going to work and doing something that, is kind of a do what you have to do until you can do what you want to do kind of thing. But that it's just, like even exercising, or doing whatever it is, and like getting to I get to do this stuff. These are things I get to have. I get to, and this is one of the interruptions that happens with when our relationship with discipline is like conflated or tied into punishment, is that the interruption with pleasure in the second hub, which is just so epidemic. To feel pleasure, enjoy it, savor it without being afraid you're shirking a responsibility, or something could go wrong, or you're doing something wrong, or you're not worth it, or it's guilty or shameful, gross, whatever. That like I think that this interruption plays a big role in the relationship with pleasure, because it sort of it takes it introduces this voice of like, but I have to, because I have to. I have to. I must. You must. Um, and that's super cultural, I think, you know. But also, yeah. Yeah. So, yeah, okay. I'm gonna dip back in here. Well, okay, so the thing about social media, okay, for one little jump back in. The thing about social media is that I kind of felt tonight, I was like wrote this post that said that maybe the most transformational spiritual evolutionary elevation that you can be making right now is related to feeling pleasure and enjoying something deeply, deeply, like what you really want, and exploring that and allowing yourself to have the full satisfaction of it, not have it interrupted by this sense of like, oh, I shouldn't be doing this. There's something else I should be doing. And, and I wrote this up and then I just like, it's just too nuanced, I mean, like, there's just too much stuff where it's like, like with a post, I think there's especially when it's like of that nature, there's a bit of a duty to like stay with it and respond to people. And I realized like if people respond to this, I'm not really like I'm really just not going to enjoy this discourse. And in the spirit of pleasure, I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. I It's like, I don't want the thing of like must, kind of like there might be like must be nice or yeah, if you had money and if you have money, maybe that's easy or I have real responsibility. There's like a whole thing. There's a whole shtick with it, and I mean, no, because I've had it. I've carried this shtick of must be nice if I didn't have all these like this real shit to deal with, like then maybe I could enjoy myself in this like, in this self-absorbed way. It's just like I don't want to get into that. I don't want to get in that discussion. And I also didn't want to be, I was thinking, I was like, I guess I was preemptively thinking, and maybe this is something else to consider, but I just thought like, and then the other thing is people being like, well, what do I really want? I want to have like a brownie while I watch Netflix. And I was like, yeah, that's going to depress me too. That's going to depress me. I was listening to Janelle Monáe's new album, and it's just such a like absolute expression of this really like high level of actualization when it comes to like pleasure and self-awareness and aliveness. And I was like, I want to stay in this vibe. I want to stay in this vibe. And I don't think a social media post prompting others to do so is going to support that. So yeah, that was definitely a me first kind of thing. So, all right, here we go. This time for real. All right. So overuse of authority is often applied at an age before episodic memory is possible. Yeah. When the development of the nervous system is in its nascent period, the emerging will of a small child is frequently reckless, unpredictable, and beyond reason. This places strain on overworked, overwhelmed, and under-supported parents. The cultural history of our relationship with authority contains conflicting messages. We tend to imagine ourselves as free, but conform to restrictive and unspoken social, cultural, and professional expectations. Western culture and values are a convergence of Christianity, Judaism, Islam, and European mythology. Achilles wrote Prometheus Bound around the same time the Book of Job was composed. These conflicting stories, Prometheus's bravery and defiance, and Job's complete submission and surrender, exemplify the conflict in Western consciousness and subconscious. Job wins a bet for God by tolerating the destruction of his life without complaint, and he never receives an apology or explanation. Prometheus defiantly brings fire to humans and suffers the consequences of the endless, horrific wrath of Zeus. This dichotomy is, on the one hand, between the loyalty and submission of Job, and on the other hand, between the bravery and defiance of Prometheus. Both lock horns within our shared American psyche. We tend to identify with Prometheus's bravery, forming the inwardly defiant and outwardly compliant mentality that splits us into outward facing, agreeable personas, while on the inside we seethe. I discuss below how we are kept separated from and unaware of our power, and how we tend to use, intentionally and unintentionally, our power against ourselves. Wow, look at that. What an academic I am. So, it's funny, oh, that's the end of that section. Well, what do you know? Um, yeah, it's funny is when I wrote that, a lot of stuff that's in this section was really protracted. My editor really did her genius by slicing it down to that. That was like probably a lot longer than that because I was probably really proud of myself for all the research that I did on it. Like that's also part of it. I'm not really an academic, so when I was doing a lot of reading and researching and contemplating, I think there was something I was kind of proud of that. It felt good. I liked it. Um, Yeah, I think that the core here was to explore in a historical context the idea of this conflict that we have, and we get into it, or as it comes up later in page 142 in the overachievement cycle, which is which is this kind of like hard work, but risk averse cycle that keeps us from really ascending and using our hard work and effort to achieve greater fulfillment. But this conflict of the bravery, the Promethean bravery to just it's just Prometheus gave fire to humans, as an act of defiance against, his father. And as a result, he was, tied to a mountaintop and had his kidneys eaten up by a bird every day. And then they grew back and it just happened each day. Right? Like that's pretty awful. And that kind of defiance, that kind of that kind of conviction, it's this is where I'm kind of, you see the divinity really illustrated as much more dynamic and complex and mirroring like deeper and more complex realities of being human being, which is, in Hinduism, in like Nordic and Greek mythology. And what we see with the world religions, which are the non-ethnic religions. So ethnic religions, if are, like Judaism and Hinduism and the religions that you're born into and are really like woven into an ethnic heritage. And world religions are brought forward by like a singular person representing a movement that invites anybody who will partake. Um, and it's interesting that the world religions, you know, seem to lack a lot more nuance and duality in them. I mean, I think the texts present them, but as they seem to be like surfacing, especially right now in popular consciousness or culture, rather, not consciousness, is pretty like singular ideals, you know. So, so I think one of the things when we consider, one of the push pulls of modern life is the recognition of the hero within us that would stand up, who would be the Prometheus that would advance civilization, like the sense of recognition, because that seed exists in all of us. And that's the third hub seed, is that power. Yeah. And, and then you have the story of Job where, like the devil it's kind of like rough. It's like where the devil is like, "Hey, God, your followers aren't really that into you." And God is like, "Let me show you." And Job just basically gets, I mean, like, he loses everything. And he's always like, and people are keep telling him, like, "Hey, maybe you should be mad about this." He's like, "I'm not mad." His wife dies, kids killed, loses all his, like, his whole, everything. And, and then, I mean, then he's, like, given a new wife, and that's, like, restorative justice. Um, yeah. But there's something to be said for that. There because, I mean, and Job is in everything. Like, Job is in like, is not just in the Christian Bible. That's a story that's, like, ripples through the world religion texts. Um, there is something about that, I think, that maybe is, really about faith and devotion in a sense. I think to say that representing, like, I'm not like, that really it does represent, something, it represents a nuance of faith in something bigger than yourself. I mean, the way the story is told is, like, kind of a bummer for Job, but there's but yeah, I mean, that dichotomy of really, I don't, really, yeah, relating to the bravery and living, with in obedience. Um, yeah, I think that I don't know, is that it? What is it? Yeah, it's 27 minutes. I feel like that's a lot of time. Um, yeah. Yeah, and I think one of the things in these sections too, um, we're in chapter 6 in the third hub, is that, these topics, even in as I read them, there is like a little, you know, it's they're more like, I'd almost call them more sort of dangerous than others. Talking about religion, talking about Hitler, this comes up. Um, yeah, yeah. This chapter in particular is, and it really, my editor did a fantastic job guiding me through this. But yeah, 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 yeah. So, hmm. Yeah, I think, I guess if there's anything in terms of a closing thought on this, it is that our relationship with consistently showing up for ourselves with discipline, when it's tied to the things that matter to us, tied to things we really connect with, showing up, showing up, showing up, showing up the best you can that day, this day, and this day, each one as it happens. Um, that's how transformation happens. And that's how transformation in so many ways, in terms of the work that we do and our relationship with ourselves, relationship with others, but with ourselves. Show up for yourself every day. You see, if you do the same thing every day, it's different. Every day there's kind of a like different arrangement of ourselves that shows up. Different mood, different feeling, different weather, different diet, different certain things that have happened leading up to the moment. different stimulations, different happinesses, different things. And so just feeling that we're so interconnected in and being able to feel that, and to have the consistency be that you show up for yourself. You show up for yourself. It's like creates this love, creates that sense of not being alone. So, that of someone who's always showing up for you. You always showing up for you. So as an act of love, the act of love of consistently showing up for yourself. On the worst days, you show up for yourself. The worst days in whatever way you can. If it's like almost nothing, if it feels hard to see, try to reframe that. Try to be inspired by the person that just comes like crawling to the threshold, and see that in yourself, that like that will to show up is like that will. It's not the condition we show up in. Exterior circumstances shape too much. So that will, that's that love. It's deep. It's deep. It's deep. And there are parts of ourselves that are showing up right now. As we breathe, as our heart beats. It's profound. So, anyhow, thanks for watching my. I think I had pretty downcast eyes in this one. So anyway, it's always. I'm really appreciative. This is something I think I've had a lot of just this sense as I'm navigating where this goes by feeling it out. And part of the feeling it out is realizing that there are places where I'm comfortable, where I don't really belong anymore. And feeling how these places just do not give me energy. And following that, and this is one of the things that's challenging, is letting go of the things we're attached to constantly, really. I mean, I'm not finding that this stops. I don't know if you have. But this ongoing exploration. Yeah. And, and the question of who is this really for? And it's not who can I, who's this for? Who finds this? Who connects with this? Yeah. It's not really mine to decide. I think that's one of the things. It's like, it's not, all I can really do is follow kind of the kind of through line that presents itself to where there's energy for this, and learn to refine my knowledge of what is. Yeah, I mean, it's okay. There's a couple sort of corrections and stuff, but anyhow, so yeah, giving you a little kiss, good night. And my cat is sitting here next to me. He's very cuddly. He's been so cuddly. Maybe it's because the air conditioning's on and it's a little too cool for him. Anyhow, sending you lots of love wherever you are and appreciating you. Until next time. Bye for now.